It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, today on my Sharp Interactive board, I have none other than Brian Winters, and Brian Winters is the CIO of ECI. And if you're in the Document Ending channel, you know ECI provides the leading ERP system for that channel. They also provide leading software solutions for a lot of other verticals as well. And obviously, cybersecurity is extremely important to software providers that sell those softwares to vendors who use that software to manage their businesses. Brian, how are you doing, man? I'm so glad you find some time to talk to us today because obviously cybersecurity is on the top of everybody's mind, and I wanted to get some insight into what ECI is doing around the topic.
Awesome. I'm fantastic, Ray. Thanks for having me today.
Well, Brian, we hear all the horror stories, and, I heard a long time ago that organizations have to assume that they've been breached. And if you assume that you've been breached, then you have to have the programs and the policy and the people all in place to mitigate that breach. And, and a lot of times I think we still see people out there that are just waiting for it to happen, which is a terrible situation to be in. Or, even some of the partners that use your software, they might think in their own right mind, well, hey, I don't need to worry about anything. My software providers are going to take care of all of this. And as we saw with Kaseya and we saw with SolarWinds and folks, this isn't a dig on software companies because like I said, you got to assume that there's been a breach. So it's going to happen to all of us. And it's important that the partners that you use, obviously have those skill sets in place. So, Brian, let's just start out of the gate. Tell us what's been going on at ECI around security and have you had to make any changes over the last 6-7 months?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, Ray, security is probably the most important thing that we do. We do security for a living because we take our customers' data and we protect it, right? Mm-hmm. So we've actually made a lot of changes to our environment. We're constantly making changes to our environment, and especially as we went through COVID and had to move to a remote workforce and those kinds of things. We've had to adjust and make changes like everybody else has, to the way that we support and protect the infrastructure and our customers' data.
Let me ask you this question because I think the dollars sometimes scare people, but and you don't have to give me the exact number if you don't want, but what's the investment dollars that ECI puts on the table? Because you used to be, hey, we got to have all this money for R&D, something that would bring you all this value, and now it's like, holy crap, we got to spend X amount of dollars just for cybersecurity. I mean, what is the budget over at ECI for cybersecurity, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I don't know if I can share the exact number, but it's well north of 10 million, close to doubling that. So we spend an enormous amount of money on cybersecurity and also, the operations, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of lumping those things together. One of the things, for example, backups, right? It's probably the most important thing that we do is make sure that we have good, solid backups. And so we spare no expense on that. We spend almost $1 million on our backup solution. We back up on site into all flash storage arrays so that we can restore quickly. We can restore a VM in 5 or 6 minutes usually. But we also offload those to multiple sites so we have geographic redundancy and protection from ransomware and those kinds of things. So all of that infrastructure, the software, and the people, we've got a full-time team, a large team that manages that on a day-to-day basis. So when a backup job fails at 3 a.m, because that's just the way backup jobs are, there's somebody there to restart that and make sure that it's successful. So when you kind of figure in all of those costs, it's a significant amount of investment that ECI makes.
We've talked a lot about, and I think I talked to Larissa last time she was on, but, we're trying to move in our world, the Document Ending channel, and I know you support all the verticals, but in the Document Ending channel, we're trying to move those folks to the cloud versus on-premise. And, can you give us any insight as to why that's more important from a security perspective than on-premise? I mean, is there a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think for me, and I'll talk not as the CIO of ECI, the service provider, but just as a CIO, of a company, right? I look at it like this. I use a dealer to manage my printers and my copiers because that's what they do for a living, and they're just better at it than I am. Mm-hmm. Can I have my service desk technicians do maintenance and change toners and all that stuff and monitor when the printer's down? Yes, I can. But they're not going to be as good at it. Mm-hmm. And inevitably, the day before a board meeting, when I'm trying to print 30 board decks and my printers go down, we're just not equipped to handle that at the same level that a dealer would be able to. So I know that my dealer is going to bring me in a temporary machine to help me get my print job done when it's critical. And I know that they're going to proactively manage the maintenance and they're not going to forget about it because it's the most important thing that they do. Mm-hmm. And security is the same way. I talk to business owners all the time who call us because they've been the victim of a ransomware attack in their on-premise environment. And they're like, hey, can you help us? Like, we're down, we're just totally screwed. Can you help us out? And I'm like, okay, yes, we're happy to help. Where are your backups? Well, so that's the thing, Bob does our backups, and Bob's great. He's my nephew. He's awesome. But like, he went on FMLA for 3 weeks. And so we don't have any backups for the last 4 weeks. We're hoping you guys can somehow magically recover our data for us. And unfortunately, we get to a point where we're like, hey, we're happy to help you get reinstalled and help you move your whatever backups you do have. But if you don't have the data, you don't have the data, right? And so what we find is that in a small business, when you're dealing with the thousands of things that are coming at you every day, trying to manage your inventory, trying to manage your people, dealing with that problem customer, the backups and the kind of day-to-day maintenance things just fall to the wayside. And that's just the way it is, right? And so my view anyway, I want to put my data, especially my critical ERP data, with a company who's solely focused on making sure that stuff is protected, right? A team of people that are watching it and looking over it and making changes to the environment to respond to new threats and those kinds of things, right? And that's what we do for a living. So in my view, and I know it seems a little self-serving, but in my view, small businesses especially who don't have big teams managing this stuff should be moving all of their critical infrastructure, not just ERPs, but your mail and all the things that you need to run your business to the cloud, where somebody else is focused on managing it.
Well, I'm hoping that most people have that mindset, but I know there's still some of our friends in the Document Imaging channel that are on premise, and I don't quite understand why. I would imagine when you talk to a partner that's actually had a breach, moving them to the cloud is pretty simple at that point. And, why do we always wait before we do something? But, Brian, there is a real balance between security and convenience. And, and a lot of times, that balance is weighted more to convenience. And I think it takes the strong leadership, the CIOs of the world, to be able to challenge that convenience. So at ECI, we got a lot of executives in the space, people my age that don't like to do like two-factor authentication, all these things. So, how does a CIO today really balance that convenience versus security? And what are you experiencing at ECI?
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier than it used to be, let me tell you. So the more visibility in the media to all of these large ransomware attacks, the pipelines and the food processing plants and those kinds of things, the easier it becomes to have that argument. So I would say 10 years ago, that was a really tough argument to have. These days, the business, especially at ECI, because we're so security focused, the business is largely coming to us and saying, hey, we want to be as secure as possible. What's that look like, right? So we get no pushback these days compared to how it used to be anyway on implementing things that kind of take away convenience, but also make us more secure. And also the security technology has gotten a lot better now, right? So two-factor authentication used to be a giant pain. You had to find your RSA dongle and wait for the number to change and type it in and all that. A lot of the modern systems today, you get a push notification to your phone through an app that you've installed, and it's just hitting the button. And so there's a lot less friction now. So I would say the pull and the tug of war between convenience and security has gotten a lot less. And also just because of all the media attention, it's easier to implement now.
Well, I know you keep your day pretty busy just being a CIO at ECI, but here's a question for you. In all the verticals that you all support, do you have a mechanism in place to kind of help those organizations with security issues? I mean, if they call you up, or do you guys offer any kind of services around that, or would you give them a checklist at least, or can you police, who they think's policing them? In other words, I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we do a number of things to help our customers. I do webinars. We do these types of things that we're doing right now, right? And I have a webinar series that I've been doing lately where we talk about, like, if you're a small business, what are the actual critical, most important things that you can do to protect yourself? And we talk about what to do if you're the victim of a breach. So we have kind of some educational stuff that we do. We have white papers that we publish. We have our blog, etc. And then more tactically, we get involved with customers on a fairly regular basis who are having issues with their hosted infrastructure, right? So I mentioned earlier, a customer will call us because they've had a ransomware attack or they had a server fail and they need help kind of getting back up and running and those kinds of things. And I think the other thing that we do is we do a good job of providing some thought leadership in that space as well. So, especially if you're moving into our cloud environment, we're kind of directing users to, hey, I know you used to do it this way, but this way is more secure, or we don't allow the thing that you want to do. Maybe you want to set up some sort of VPN environment, and we don't want to do that and we'll give you the reasons why. And here's all the challenges with that from a security perspective. So we kind of help guide people into making what we believe to be better decisions around security as well.
Well, obviously cybersecurity is the top of everybody's mind, and obviously we have to pay attention to it. I know there's a lot of software providers that integrate with ECI, like in the Automate world that I'm from, the Document Imaging Channel. Are you starting to find yourself having to put more pressures or more, rules in place for those folks to integrate with you? And has that changed over the last few years? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. And this is, really an evolution of the offering in all of our verticals, right? So we more and more we're pushing people towards secure APIs. We're, making customers and also partners that we work with in this space conform to our security policies and practices, those kinds of things. And that's one of the benefits of being a larger enterprise like us, where we have a lot of customers. We've got 30,000 customers, and in a lot of these spaces, we have a majority of customers, right? So we can kind of help vendors make it worth their while to adopt these security practices that are, expensive, make the product harder to maintain, make it more expensive to develop, make it, the security versus convenience thing that you talked about earlier. So yeah, we do take a leadership role in helping vendors manage that process as well.
Well, that's something really I just didn't, as you said it, I was thinking of that. Because you're in these other verticals and you understand those verticals' business models and you understand the vendors that do business with those. So it does make it a little bit easier. That's an interesting take, because sometimes if you're looking at a global platform, if you will, that covers or takes care of everybody, that could be a little bit, you might not have as much information as you guys do. You're a little bit more intimate. So that's interesting. Brian, obviously we could probably spend 2 days talking about cybersecurity with our friends, but is there anything that we want to just leave them with? Because there's two things I want them to do. They have to go to the cloud, and they have to implement security, and they have to know who they can call. So with those three things, is there anything you want to say to kind of close the deal with these folks?
No, I'm the tech nerd, not the sales guy. So closing the deal is not really my area of expertise, but I do genuinely believe that your data is more secure in the cloud. And whether that's with us or with somebody else, you should really be taking a hard look at, what I tell people on these webinars is find your most important systems, the systems that if you came in tomorrow and they were encrypted because of ransomware, you would just be freaking out about. Those, the 3 or 4 or 5 most important systems that you have to run your business, and look at moving those things to the cloud. It's just the most important thing you can do to protect yourself. 60% of small businesses go out of business within 6 months of a breach. That's a statistic that's been proven over and over again. And it's simply because, most of our small business customers don't have the wherewithal from a financial standpoint or an expertise standpoint to really protect themselves. The criminals are getting just so much more sophisticated. They're implementing AI and machine learning, and now you can get ransomware as a service, where a disgruntled former employee can go on the internet and download a very sophisticated ransomware package and deploy it because they know more about your environment and they know where the cracks are, right? So we're just seeing, and that's actually the pipeline ransomware attack was ransomware as a service, right? So it's just really hard for a small business to protect themselves these days. And you're just way better off, putting that data with somebody who's, really more geared up to protect it.
Well, I know that this will remain a heavy topic for you. You're going to stay busy for a long time to come. But hey, we appreciate what you do over at ECI, and I know there's hundreds of thousands of partners around the world that use your software. You said 30,000 customers, so obviously you guys got to stay on your toes. Brian, it's great having you on, because you know what? Everybody knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.